everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin, and who's with me tonight?
The Merchant of Death, Michael K. Hughes.
And the person who didn't think of anything witty to open with, Bill Tucker.
Or I didn't think of anything witty either. And for those confused, we're doing a special episode we're going to start doing once a month. As you already saw, the title of this episode is going to be Iron Man MCU film. We're going to start, as I have been talking about this off and on for months at this point, I'm starting with these lovely gentlemen, an MCU chronologically from release date walkthrough of the movies. Plan is about once a month. So that way you guys have an idea, like, what the hell is this? So that's what we're going to start doing, because I really want to rewatch these movies and I need an excuse to do it, and I make a podcast episode about it, because why not?
That works.
I'm a podcaster.
I love it.
And, you know, it was dawned on me, like, this came out back in 2007, the first Iron Man film, and I haven't seen it since Age of Ultron came out, so that would have been, 5 years ago at this point? Right? Something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right, yeah.
It's been a while, and I mean, I've always been meaning to watch this movie, but it was never on Netflix. It was never on any way for me to easily stream it. And who needs DVDs or Blu-rays? I needed access to hit a button and have it on, or I won't do it. I've realized. So
Disney's got you covered now.
Yeah,
that's it.
Except for three of them. Three of them they don't got me covered for, and one I'm okay with it. Two I'm not. We'll get to that.
I had the Blu-ray. I actually had a physical piece of medium. I had to put into a player, wait for it to load. It was exhausting. Like the first 2 minutes.
Get out of your chair.
I know. I have a giant notebook of 400 DVDs and Blu-rays. This was one of them.
Can't wait for the Jetson style future where we have moving sidewalks and all that.
They're called airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
like I want one to go from my bedroom to the fridge and then back.
It's gonna be like the movie WALL-E instead.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just going to be a big human laying in the chair. Oh, but okay, this came, 2008. I can't remember if I said 2008 or 2007 all of a sudden. Doesn't matter. But I was genuinely surprised that this movie, I mean, first we should mention, like, back when this came out, this was like this was the big turning point for Marvel movies. For those that had been watching everything before that, like me, I mean, there were some good ones, as we had mentioned off radio, like Blade. Blade was an excellent freaking movie. I still think it's excellent. All three are, but that we'll get to that a different day. But some of them are god awful. Like the second Ghost Rider, I want to say came out before this. That's fucking garbage.
And Elektra,
yeah. A lot of those really disposable, late in the 90s, early 2000s superhero movies were just pretty horrendous.
They didn't try. Like, they weren't. I mean, they were just, let's make a movie off a property that already exists, and who really cares what's going to happen with it? And that was the problem. Some of them were just throwaway movies.
Or like Spider-Man 3, where they tried too hard, and then everything just kind of fell apart.
Yeah, Spider-Man 3 was bad. But that's But also, I want to say this was the first ever where you had a series of movies. I mean, they started, I know they didn't really plan it when they first did this first Iron Man. I mean, they put the seats there, but I don't think they really had any fucking idea what they were creating. But you started, first multiple movie universe with different characters and everything.
Yeah, I don't know what the story was behind it, because they do consider this the phase 3, right? Am I right in that?
Phase 1.
Oh, this is phase 1. Okay, so yep. I see. What do I know? So, and that is a good question. That is actually a good question, right? Did they really think this was going to blow up into this, nearly 20-year run of films that spans an entire epic story? I don't know, but it sure feels like it, because this feels like the first one in probably at least a decade at this point that really, like you said, they cared. And they were really looking at not only the quality of the filmmaking and the action, but the quality of the characters. And can we make these characters last 20 years? And spoiler alert, they did. So, yeah.
The thing that always got me is, like, I loved Iron Man before this movie. I thought he was an awesome character because no one knew who the fuck he was. Nobody liked Iron Man. Nobody cared about Iron Man. So I'm like, Iron Man, yeah! And people look at me like, who the hell is Iron Man? And I liked him because of the Avengers game on Genesis and Super Nintendo. And after this movie came out, and I remember seeing regular people wearing shirts of Iron Man, I'm like, I don't like Iron Man as much anymore. You took away my special.
It's too mainstream now.
It did bug me. It really did bug me after that first happened in 2008, 2009 when he started.
I have a quick question. Quick question for everybody. Now, is anyone here a comic book person? Like, knows this source material before they got to the movie?
To a degree.
Okay.
The only thing I knew from comics were from video games based on comics, so I would say no.
Yeah, I think I've read one comic book in my life. So this will be an interesting perspective, because the perspective changes based on your history with the franchise and with, this whole Marvel universe. So this will be interesting. I'm looking at these solely through a film, critical perspective personally.
Oh, I was wrong. Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, the terrible one, came out in 2011.
Oh, jeez.
So the first Ghost Rider came out.
Have to watch that?
No, it's not part of the MCU, unless you really want to. But no, I was wrong in the year. I just realized that was later. But that movie's god fucking off.
Long enough that they should have known better, and they still went there.
Yeah.
But also, the reason why they picked Iron Man in the first place was because they didn't own the rights to all their popular characters. Punisher, X-Men, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. None of those are owned anymore by Marvel, which Disney had bought around this time. So they didn't have a choice. I think this was owned by Disney. I know this was owned by Disney already. Couldn't remember when they bought Marvel.
It kind of worked out for him because, like you said, Iron Man wasn't a well-known name. He was kind of a B-list superhero. And this movie basically made him a household name.
Yeah, it changed everything.
And it also remade Robert Downey Jr. as a household name too. And it's an interesting parallel that you have a B-list, superhero and a B-list at that time actor. And both of those were elevated to, A-list status.
Oh, also, I misquoted one thing. Disney didn't buy Marvel until after this movie came out. They bought him in 2009.
Oh, wow.
So when they made this was just Marvel making something that they still had control of before the merger had happened. Or I don't know if it's even a merger, but before they bought them. Okay, that I didn't know. I thought that they had already bought it and were kind of okay, what can we do to make use of our $4 billion we just spent? But okay. So okay, first thing, this, as you were saying, this was really the opening for Robert Downey Jr. after he had been off the grid for so long. I didn't even know who he was when this movie came out. I'd only seen him in one other movie ever before, which I didn't even know was him, which was U.S. Marshal, which is a super deep cut.
I think I might have seen that. Yeah.
It's a sequel to Witness with Harrison Ford, without Harrison Ford, but has Tommy Lee Jones. Yeah, I figured nobody knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no.
It's a random ass movie, but he's in it, and that's the only time I've ever seen that actor before. I had no idea who he was in this. I was like, who the hell is this guy? What, he looked like Tony Stark from the comics?
Yeah.
And to answer your earlier question, I had never really read Iron Man comics before this movie came out. I knew Iron Man from video games. I'd seen comics. I'd held comics, but I wasn't a fan of Iron Man. I liked the character, but I wasn't a fan. I hadn't read his comics. I had just seen them and read a couple of Avengers comics when I was younger. So I didn't know what to come into it. I actually didn't watch this movie the first time until people started talking about it at where I was working at Target, and people were like, oh, you got to go see this. And I finally watched this. I actually missed this in theaters and saw it on DVD randomly one time, which was interesting.
I'm sure I saw it in theaters, but I don't remember. God, it's crazy. It's been, 12 years now?
Yeah, 2000. Wow. Just came out in May 2008.
Jeez.
So yeah, it's been a long damn time.
Yeah,
for sure.
Even the way that the movie opens up, you have Tony Stark, who's just inherited Stark Industries, and they have him traveling in Afghanistan, and it doesn't take long. Where I want to say he's sitting in the back of the Jeep, and he's already kind of screwing off. You have the guy asking about the picture with him, and he doesn't give a shit about what's going on. And that fixed Robert Downey Jr. because he came off being a druggie. He came off, getting drunk all the time, waking up in people's houses, and he was he played the perfect drunk because he was a drunk before this.
Yeah, and he was sober for a bit, I think, before this actually, before he did Iron Man. This is a phenomenal opening, and I think it might be one of the better openings in the entire MCU, if memory serves. Because Jon Favreau, the director, who is a genius director for this, he directs this movie beautifully. He realized that we have to get started now. And he knows that he doesn't have a lot of time to develop Tony as a character. We got to get people liking him immediately. So they get him in the back of a Jeep with American hurrahs and taking pictures and cheesy, late 2000s cell phone technology that looked really rad at the time. And what's great about this is that instantly, within 2 minutes, you like him. You like Tony. He's fun. He's affable. He's clever. He's clearly rich, and which makes the subsequent really intense violence for a PG-13 movie. I forgot watching American soldiers getting gunned down horrifically. It was like, oh boy, it really kicks off. So within 3 minutes, your tone is set. on both levels. You got your tone of your Tony character, and then the tone of the film of the next half an hour basically, which we'll get to. I think it's an amazing opening to a movie, especially since they flash back, but we'll get to that as we go through it.
I mean, it just opens up well. Like it gives you what you're going to be getting. And they also know that like, the majority of people, the normals, as I know some people like to call people that don't read comic books, had no fucking clue who he was at this time. Like Iron Man was not a character anyone knew. People knew a Spider-Man. People might have, knew who the X-Men were. People did not know who Iron Man was, other than me, who was very upset.
What did you think about it, Mike? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just... yeah, go ahead, sorry.
You're good. I mean, we got two mics, by the way, on here, so that's going to be interesting sometimes.
Yeah, I was going to say, do I call you Michael? Who's Mike and Michael? M1, M2? What's the I should have asked that before we started recording
that's fine.
A podcast for people to listen to, but,
Yeah, I mean, we can change your name to Mike, too, and just make it really confusing for the listeners.
Just call me Mikkel, and I'll be good. I want to be Mikkel if you're doing that.
Oh, let's go by Michael, and Mike can go by Michael.
Okay.
Try and keep it easy that way. I hadn't really thought about how quick they get into it and why they do it, but yeah, you make a lot of good points there. If you're going to lose people that early in the movie, then you might just as well lose them for the rest of the MCU.
Yeah, because you're not you can't trade on people's recognition of the character. Like Mike's been saying, nobody really you knew of Iron Man in the periphery. If you know anything about comics or even geek culture, you're aware of them, but you can't truck on the fact that people know who Batman is, right? You can't really slow burn this thing. And this thing can't be 3 hours, unlike the later movies that are 3 hours. But we got to get this bad boy rolling, and it does that so well with just positive imagery and then some really intense action and violence. And boom, you get to the Iron Man's credit thing. Iron.
Well, even just like the first scene when you have him get out of the truck and you have him testing the Jericho missile, and it kind of just shows you how of an asshole he kind of is and how he isn't really conscious of what they're doing. Like they let off the Jericho missile, they blow up some mountain, he's just standing there while they're videotaping. The shockwave hits him. And he doesn't really give a shit. He's like, you know what? I made an awesome weapon. We're gonna fight those enemies. We're gonna take them out for America. Like it's very, but that fits that time. Like after 9/11 happened,
yes,
the country
very of
was
its time.
Was very much like that. Where it isn't how it was in the 70s of Vietnam, but everybody was like very gun ho about fighting, very gun ho about they're the enemy, because first time, at least in America's eyes, for many years, you had someone that was seen as the enemy after 9/11. This movie kind of plays off that mindset and that mindset changing also, which I felt was an underlying theme that they were kind of going for.
Yeah, it has a lot of that that American exceptionalism where it's kind of like, hoorah, we're the good guy, you're the bad guy. In my notes, I actually have a section where Tony shoots brown people, because that's what we did in those movies in the late 2000s. It was, if you had an army movie, you were shooting brown people, and which is, I guess maybe if the movie was released nowadays, maybe a little more woke, but that's kind of what it was back in them days.
Yeah, I mean, it's accurate. It's something that I noticed when I was watching this, that it really does that.
Yeah. I
mean, it makes you, but I mean, it also does a good job of kind of, suckering you in with that beginning of where he is, and it doesn't take long before they get in the van, and like a really key scene, which I completely forgot about, Terrence Howard's character. Yeah, remember that guy in the MCU? No one does. Which plays, Rhodey, which is, I knew from the Iron Man cartoon is War Machine. Mm-hmm. And I forgot he was in this movie. I completely forgot about him. Oh, poor guy. But he comes up to him and he's like, hey, I'm going to get in the car with you. And he's like, no, this is the fun V. You go in the next one.
Humdrum V.
The humdrum V is a really funny line. Very good.
Happy as hell he did not get in that truck.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to just paper over real quick, and we'll get back. We'll probably go into now when he's in, he's a prisoner. But they do a great backstory. Once, the Iron Man thing comes across the screen, the title screen. They do a really nice job of filling everyone in on the backstory, the big exposition dump of this is who Tony Stark is. Mm-hmm. This is his history. Here's the dude as the clearly villainous clearly villainous. I was
watching Bias Stain?
Yeah.
I did not
that's it.
Bias that the first time.
It's funny. I thought back to the first time I saw it, and I didn't catch it either. But this time, since I have seen this movie probably a dozen times, I really do love it. And I have it on that handy Blu-ray disc. I could just pop it in whenever I want. It did strike me how not obvious, but it really was. Right, very quickly I realized, oh, here's all the indicators of this guy being villainous, but we'll get there as well. But it's a really great backstory scene, and again, it just kind of creates that balance. He's a likable guy who's also a dick. I call that the Tony Soprano syndrome, where you have Tony Soprano more of a divide, who's really likable, lots of fun, and a complete sociopath. And your brain has to make a choice as to whether you like him or not. And usually, surprisingly, affable wins. Likable wins. And that's why when we watch The Sopranos, for example, which I adore, that's why we like Tony Soprano. He's a sociopath, and he's extremely likable and funny and clever. But those two worlds, we have to make a choice because they're hard to coincide. We have to make that choice. And with Tony, I make the choice. I really like him. He's a funny dude who takes pictures with servicemen and makes weapons of mass destruction. Hoorah.
They do such a good job of him not being aware of what he's doing until like when they blow up the Jeep and he ends up in the cave, which I can't remember how the comic does it. I know in the comic he does, I want to say escapes, and he still builds an armor close to it, is what we see in the movie, which was they did a pretty good job of adapting what I knew as his origin, even though I've never read the book and probably never will, because reading 1963 comics is really hard. I've done it. It's hard. Even that whole scene when you see him, get hit by the bomb, he's trying to escape, and I love how right before he gets hit, he sees a Stark missile hit the ground, says Stark across the missile, and then all of a sudden it blows up and you get hit with a shrapnel. I mean, I think that also plays such a big part to show him, like, yes, you're making these awesome weapons for America, but guess what? They have them too, because as a warmonger, you don't care who buys your armor. It's all profit to you, which is very illegal, but it's that, the idea of what greed can make a person do.
Yeah, like during the Jericho demonstration, he even kind of crafts on that old line about having the weapon you never need to fire, and he says you only need the weapon you need to fire once.
Yeah.
It's like, buy my guns.
Buy my things that go boom.
And you get a free one for every million or something you spend free, he says too. Like there's a line in there. I can't remember.
Oh yeah, where he throws in the cooler for every 500 million sold.
Something stupid, yeah. That is a cool cooler though, by the way, in this scene.
True.
But when he's in the cave and you see the doctor working on him with a couple different people, and just the whole realization when he wakes up in this cave and he starts to get up, he pulls the thing out of his nose, which creeped the hell out of me.
Oh.
I don't know why.
I still have to look away from that.
I forgot all about that. I'm like, it keeps going. Ugh. And I was just like, oh, I didn't like this. But can you imagine waking up and having a car battery attached to your chest and be like, yeah, don't unplug that, buddy, or you're not going to be okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty effective bit of junior body horror. You have a hole in your chest with an electromagnet pulsing away. Neat little thing I didn't realize, he didn't build the first, not the arc reactor, but he didn't build the first thing that saved his life that his scientist friend did in the prison. And I thought it was really interesting because he sees that and he's like, oh, I can do this better. And it kind of connects these dots for this ancient arc reactor technology relatively. But I just thought it was interesting. Oh, yeah, someone else saved his life. This doctor took care of him and had this genius idea to use a magnet to keep shrapnel out of your bloodstream.
I also want to say he's in Iron Man 3, too, in a very small cameo role to say, because he says, we met before, but you don't remember it. They actually filmed
I've never seen it. Okay.
Yeah, it's very brief. He walks by, he says hello, he ignores him and keeps walking, or something like that. It's been a long time, but he is in that movie, I want to say, in the prequel scene.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I forgot all about it until I was talking, and I'm like, oh, yeah. But it is cool to show that it was someone else is involved for saving his life and helping him, leading him down the road that ends up becoming the Iron Man and the arc reactor and all what makes him who he is. Yinsen's does a good job in this movie. I can't remember who the name of the actor is. I should pull that up if I can find it. But it's just also someone to, it's someone for you to start caring about. Actor is Sean Toub, or T-O-U-B, we're going to go with that. It's somebody to kind of show you, here you have this rich, billionaire, and you have someone who's in a captive who doesn't have the technology at their hands and is able to save him, and when he should have been dead. I thought that was a really, it's really powerful how they did it and how he starts becoming the realization of the situation he's in. And they ask him, his captives, who are the 10 Rings, which is also a reference to the comics that I didn't get at the time when I first saw this movie. 10 Rings are the terrorist group or organization that is that Mandarin has to do with Mandarin. I don't want to, because Mandarin is a very famous Iron Man villain who was never in the movies yet, who has 10 rings, who's kind of like an alien or a god or something of that nature. He's a very inhuman character that has, I want to say he's an alien or he found an alien artifact, something of that nature. And that's what the 10 Rings are referencing.
Yeah, the 10 Rings are actually 10 magic rings that give Mandarin different abilities.
Yes.
Literally. They went a very, very different direction in the movies with that, especially with the Mandarin.
That's not the Mandarin though.
We'll get there.
Again, is this Iron Man 3 we're talking about?
Yeah.
I don't even know. Just why'd you?
It's okay.
I don't even know anything about this, and my thing is just make one. I'm sure like a combination of 6 of those powers could have allowed you to create just one that does all of them. I don't understand why you would need 10. But
to rule them all.
Like, yeah, I mean it's cliche, but it works. I mean that's the best thing you want to do. I don't know.
I unfortunately can't remember Mandarin very well, but I can say the way they did the 10 Rings is they made it as in 10 different kind of like races of people out here in the Middle East who have joined together to fight against what they see as tyranny. Which, I mean, you kind of have nowadays with ISIS in a way of you have different people from different groups coming together under one thing. So that's kind of what I felt like they were going for, even though I want to say this is before ISIS it came about.
I hadn't thought of it like that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's how I took it. Like when I was watching it this time, cool. I'm like, oh,
nice. That's I better than anything I thought of. So I am so on board with your assessment, sir.
They make the comment when Yinsen is talking, he's like, I speak a bunch of different languages, but not enough for this place. And he starts going over a bunch of different, some of the different languages. You have lots of Asian and European countries that are in this group of all these different people that have joined together. And early on, they tell him, hey, you're going to make us a Jericho missile. And of course, he's like, no, I'm not. And that scene is still tough when they start torturing him and just dunking him in the water before he.
Ooh, yeah, that's rough. Yeah, that's a rough one. That's not like unpleasant.
I mean, I don't like torture scenes in general. I mean, even though like this movie is rated, I want to say PG-13, it's still like,
it's total line in that section. Yeah, especially when it's like the dunking the head in water. Water for me is the scariest thing on the planet. It is, because I can run from fire. Lightning's not going to bother me too much. But if a wall of water is coming at me, I'm dead. There's nothing I can do. I just stare at it and say, well, that was fun.
That's accurate.
So anything involving like heads dunking in water or cover, no, please don't. Please stop also, that.
You don't live that far from a giant body of water. Like,
this is true.
Oh yeah. You live in Texas. You're a little closer. I live in Minnesota. No, if I see a big giant water coming to me, everyone else is already dead. So I'm in a lot of trouble.
You've gotten notice.
I'm like, we lost New York. We lost Ohio. It's coming. We lost Illinois. Like
that totally went on your Twitter feed before, at least 20 minutes before that bad boy comes. Yeah, if the Gulf of Mexico gets angry and decides to rise up, no, that's it. Yeah, no, water's not fun. So for me, that's a very scary, like that hits a nerve for me. Anything that involves like waterboarding or dunking or no, thank you.
I can understand that. Houston got flooded last year, I want to say, right?
Oh yeah. It was 2 years ago, I think, at this point now. But yeah, Houston had these ridiculous floods. No, thank you.
So I can understand where that comes from. You have a reason to be scared of water. That it's a possibility. Here, I just got tornadoes every once in a while. We just get sub-zero conditions. That's our fear up here. Oh, freaking Minnesota. And just like, even when he does finally agree to work for them, he doesn't really agree. He starts taking pieces of equipment to build the arc reactor to save his life and to get this car battery off him, which I also thought was super cool, how he's pulling out missiles just for one little part that probably cost a couple $100,000. And he's like, we need, I forget how many it is. I want to say it's a high number that he tells Yinsen that we need these little part in order to make the palladium core or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't remember the number. He tells him to break down the other 11 missiles. So They need a decent amount.
Yeah.
1.5 grams, maybe?
Yeah, the first little sliver he pulls out was 1.5 grams, and I forget what I saw this less than 24 hours ago. I should know this, but yeah, it was something. He's like, yeah, break open these next ones. It's cool, and this is the first time where we see Tony doing really smart stuff. We've been told how smart he is. We've been told this whole time for the last 20 minutes. Yeah, this guy's a genius. He makes this. He's that. Time Magazine, Newsweek. But now we get to see him actually doing smart stuff. And I love when people do smart things in movies. It's really fun. And it's really a great montage where he's making and soldering carefully. It's really fun and satisfying to see him really have to work with his hands in a very DIY environment. You know, he's less equipped than you would be in your garage, you know, just making stuff. So it's again, incredibly effective at building that character, through that character, doing things and saying things. That's how you build characters. And it's beautiful. They do such a good job.
They really do. Like the part where and the thing is, the terrorists don't even realize what he's doing. They think he's making the Jericho missile because he's kind of hiding when he's building, which I thought was also cool. And I want to say there's one part after he builds the reactor when he's building the boot, and they notice, wait a sec, something's wrong here. That doesn't look like the Jericho missile that we're trying to force him to make, which I thought was cool too. When you start seeing that come together,
I feel like his cronies have no idea. They're kind of like they're looking at it. Oh, it doesn't look like the picture.
Yeah, it's just backwards.
It's just backwards, right? And old Baldy comes by. He's like, "You dunces." He's clearly not doing it. And then he says, and this is one of my favorite parts of that whole scene or the whole section is he goes, first off, he threatens to put a piece of coal in our scientist friend's mouth, which is so scary. That's really tense. He tells him he has one day. You have till tomorrow to build a missile. Hang on a second there, Ace. Time out. Like, because here's my thinking on that. What happens if he doesn't deliver? What, are you going to kill him? Who else is going to make your missile? Nobody. Clearly not the dopes who are looking at the blueprints and going, oh, it might be backwards. I don't know.
Like, there's that scene when he agrees to build it. They're like, you build it, we'll let you free. And he's like, they're not going to let me free. And says in English, the engine's like, no, they're not.
No, clearly not. And that was the one thing about that just got me. I was like, wait a minute, a day? A, fat chance. And B, what if I don't? Great, kill me. You won't get your missile. Find another genius.
I don't know why they didn't just buy the missile in the first place, which happens later. So that kind of baffled me a little bit. But
I wondered that too, and I think... Well, I'm jumping ahead a bit. When we come to the recording that they had done for the person that had the hit on Tony, he says that you didn't tell us that it was Tony Stark, so I wonder if they want the missile as leverage against this person.
Yeah, I didn't think about that way. That makes sense. That's a very interesting idea.
That is an interesting idea. I wonder... Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I didn't really think about it that hard. No, that's interesting.
And according to IMDb, the bald guy's name is Raza. I don't think it's ever actually stated in the movie.
I really don't think so. I'm calling him bald military guy, and then when he gets burnt, I call him old redhead. That's how I put it in my notes.
I want to say he's from the comic.
I think I'd remember one of the mutants from Ninja Turtles 2 was in this movie.
Well done. Well played. Well played. Very good.
Yeah, Raza's from the comic, but the Raza I'm looking at is not the guy in the movie, so I don't know. That's more work than I want to put in right now to find out. Okay. But like even just the whole scene, I mean, after they do realize like he's not building what he's supposed to be and they rush in there, they have a bomb taped to the door, which I also, again, shows, Tony Stark that he's smart. And they bust it open, all of a sudden they just blow up, and they're like, yeah, they know now.
Yeah.
And you just see like 50, 60 guys rushing all through this cave system to get to him. And they're just trying to quickly put the suit together, get it activated. And I mean, they don't have much time. That's when, as it's powering up, Yinsen takes, I want to say an AK-47, and he's like, I'll see you later. He just runs off. And earlier, which I had forgotten to mention when he first runs into Yinsen, he says, I can't wait to see my family once we get out of here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And because and then there's that scene where after he runs to try to buy more time and he starts, I like it because it reminded me of Star Wars where he's running, he's shooting the ceiling, he's running. And he gets to the end, he's like, oh shit.
Yeah,
they're just standing there. Yeah. And all I can think of is Han Solo and Chewbacca when they're running after the stormtroopers and they're like, oh, run the other way now. But it doesn't end that way for him. Yinsen just gets shot up to all hell.
Yeah.
It's just realistic. That's what would happen if you run down the corner to a bunch of armed guards.
And my My wife and I were watching it last night, and she goes, "Why are you shooting in the air? Shoot forward. Shoot in front of you." I mean, it's not keeping with his character. I'm sure he's trying to look for a nonviolent way to escape a crazed warlord. But it's an interesting point. Just shoot forward. You have the bullets. Better served in front of you.
If he's an actual doctor, maybe he follows that do no harm rule.
The Hippocratic oath.
Yeah, there you go.
That goes out the window when you're a hostage to crazed warlords. You can kind of like take a flyer on that. Like, nah.
Yeah, I think that's in the fine print of that.
Yes,
that document.
That's how I took it. That since he's a doctor, he doesn't want to take life since his job is to save life. But
yeah,
and these people deserve it.
Did anybody the first time they saw this? It's maybe hard to think back, but the first time you saw this, did anybody think he was going to survive that? When he starts just prancing towards the door with the gun in the air, did anyone think, "Ooh, he may make it"? I did not think that. No. Oh no!
Movies have taught us otherwise over the years.
Yeah, exactly. We've seen a few films.
Oh, and Raza wasn't in the comics until 2010. So he was a brand new character for this movie.
After this, yeah. Interesting.
Cool. I was curious. I looked but like you knew he wasn't going to make it. And then you don't see him again. But then when you see Tony get the armor running and he's walking through the cave, and I mean, there's a scene where I want to say it's dark and the guard looks and all of a sudden his face lights up and he just punches the guard in the face. And I mean, that's got to be scary. You imagine here you are in a cave looking for your prisoner and all of a sudden you just see eyes, a light right in front of you and a giant metal thing.
Great.
That's
very satisfying. The whole thing with the Mark I, and I'll let you guys chime in on how it looks because I think it looks great. I really love, again, this DIY welded together iron suit. The whole thing I thought is what I loved about it. It's very melee and it's physical and it's clanking and groaning and creaking and smashing and rocks. And there's just a real, again, just like a visceral melee kind of physical thing, which goes away for the most part later on in the Iron Man series. It's more about shooting and flying, and there are physical elements to it. But I just like this big lumbering beast just trying to get out of there and eliminate as many people as possible on the way. I think it's wonderful, and we're like more than half an hour into this movie at this point. Yeah, this is the first real action scene that you could describe as a traditional comic book action scene.
I'm always a big fan of whenever somebody gets punched that they go flying. So I was a big fan of the melee too.
That's great. It is very satisfying. Just watch someone fly through the air after getting struck by a giant metal monster.
It also shows like he doesn't really have any way to defend himself at first. I mean, I want to say he has a missile attached to it. He's got like one or two of them. So he's just trying to punch his way, take the shots because he's bulletproof, and just get the hell out of here. And you got the flamethrower too, which comes in effect a little bit later when he just lights suckers up. Which, God, flamethrowers, I mean, when you really think about if you have like the one with the napalm that they used in Vietnam, like how terrible of a weapon that was. You get hit with a sticky hot stuff that just burns everything. I mean, I'd rather go jump in the water and die that way instead of getting burned by, come bring the big wave at me. I'm okay with that. But, I mean, it's something I didn't realize when I saw this movie the first time, but now when I rewatch it, I'm like, that is terrible.
Yeah.
And he lit fire, but I don't like fire.
Fire is your water, evidently.
Pretty much. I don't like fire. I don't like heat very much usually. I like everything colder. I like my temperature to be around like 60 degrees. I'm happy if it gets 90. I'm like, too hot. So
that's why you live in Minnesota.
It is why I live in Minnesota. Well, I'm not excited to go to Texas here coming up. At least I'm going in March, so it shouldn't be 90 degrees in March. Hopefully,
no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Good.
Don't come in April. In April it'll be 95, and then in June it'll be 100, and it'll stay 100 for 4 months. So yay.
Yeah, I was worried it was going to be June at first, and I had to go down there, and I'm like, no. Actually, by the time you're hearing this, I would have already been in Texas. That's
all right.
I just thought that because this won't be published till March.
Cool.
So, but also, as we were saying, like just that whole scene with him busting out is a really good action scene. I mean, for some people, it's probably like watching a comic book come to life. For me, it wasn't because I've never read that book and never will. But it is so cool, like what he does in the show, how intelligent he is by able to make something powerful, effective out of scrap. And it does a good job of showing the character and and everyone just running. I want to say it's Raja who tries to shoot him with a rocket launcher, and that's when he shoots the rocket. I want to say he shoots the rocket at him and blows up next to him, which is what gives him the scar, makes him call him Redhead, as Bill called him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, he lights the rocket on his arm. He lights it like a bottle rocket, and it shoots off.
Yes, that's
into
right.
the ceiling.
It's pretty great. Pretty great.
Very
DIY,
as you put it.
Yep.
Everything is so just what can we do to make it work?
Yeah, it's really cool.
I really like that scene and the whole part where everything is then he ends up lighting all the weapons on fire because his whole thing is I'm going to stop these weapons being produced. I'm going to get it out of the bad guy's hands and I'm going to get out of here. So he just burns everything. And then he finally uses the thrusters on his suit to just blow himself out of there, which is, again, really cool to see this big giant metal suit flying in the sky. So
I'm just curious how he survived the crash.
He shouldn't have.
Why? I'm like, you should not have survived that. Sand isn't that soft. But it's listen, it's a comic book movie, whatever. Mm-hmm. That's fine.
I mean, he's halfway in the sand. Like when you see him next, half his body is in the sand. Wouldn't it be hard to pull out half your body if you're in the sand like that?
Yes, especially after plummeting 100 feet in a metal suit.
I don't see sand very much because I don't live near a beach, but I want to say sand is not, as you were saying, it's not that, like you said, not that soft of a substance.
Well, like Anakin told us, the sand is rough. Of course.
Oh, God.
Sorry. Okay.
That is the worst.
Feel free to cut
scene.
that one, Mike.
No, that is the worst scene of that movie. Like if you took out that scene in that movie would be 10 times better somehow. Oh, for those that watched Attack of the Clones, I watched it when I first got Disney Plus, and there's that part when he starts touching Padme. I just want to be like, you are the creepiest guy alive, and she's gonna marry you soon. Like, what is? Oh God, I just want to cut.
That might be another series, maybe a walk through the Star Wars movies. We'll look at that in 3 years when this one goes away.
That'll be a lot shorter series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, Tony Stark, after barely surviving, does a very. This is, I thought, some of the more cheesy parts of the movie when Terrence Howard, who I for the entire movie called Cuba Gooding Jr. I kept calling him Cuba Gooding Jr. And my wife's like, he's not Cuba Gooding Jr. He's the guy from Empire. And I'm like, I don't know who those people are.
Not at this time, he wasn't.
So it's Terrence Howard. He's the one who shows up to rescue him, which is like, really? Like, I don't know. That one, rather you just didn't show, maybe just show a helicopter coming down and then him coming out. And I thought that was really cheesy, but that's just me personally.
It could have been just any soldier. They didn't need to make it him. They just wanted to show that he was looking for his friend type of thing.
Yeah, but they have no, and I also think they were kind of really hammering in the lack of chemistry that those two have, because, oh boy, they don't have any chemistry. And according to what I've heard, that's why Mr. Gooding Jr. was not in the second one, because he got paid a ton of money and they had no chemistry.
Well, he was a big star at this time, Terrence Howard.
Was he? Was he a big star?
I want to say he's a big star because I recognize Terrence Howard over recognizing Downey Jr.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he was a big star at the time. He sure as heck got paid a lot. I think, again, my wife was telling me this, and I gotta look it up, but from what I understand is that he got paid a ton for this movie. I think more than anybody else. So maybe he was a big star at the time.
He was in a few of the movies he had done right before this, like one that I know was a big movie, Crash in 2004.
Oh, yeah.
With everybody in that freaking movie. He was in that.
Oh, yeah. The worst best picture winner.
He was in Ray. He was in Hustle and Flow, whatever the hell that is.
Right. Yep.
Four Brothers, Get Rich or Die Trying. So he had a lot of movies under his belt. Like he was someone that I'd recognized him, and he had also been nominated for a lot of awards too. I'm looking at here as I'm scrolling through his thing. So people knew who he was.
Okay, so people knew who he was. They just didn't have much chemistry, and evidently that was evident even during the filming, which is why they got the great Don Cheadle to come back in number 2 to be Warhammer. But anyway, but yeah, so yeah.
I mean, it wasn't unnecessary. Like I didn't think about it that way, but now that you mention it, it was unnecessary to have him come and get him. It could have just been any of the soldiers that flew by.
Yeah, it's more of a quibble for me, but again, it's kind of one of those like, really, you gotta bring your buddy. Your buddy was flying around for 3 months, not doing anything else.
Yeah. Well, Jensen says at one point, he said they're looking for you, but they'll never find you in these mountains. I wonder if the big explosion of all the weapons popped up on somebody's radar, and that's when they
had to.
Yeah. A Google alert explosion in random mountains.
I mean, I feel like doesn't Google alert give you, like, if stuff like that happens in your city, it will tell you? So I'm assuming in a war zone, they're going to know anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's how I looked at it.
A lot goes on there in that mountain village. But anyway.
I mean, Yeah, because they have
No,
satellites.
yeah.
So that's how I took it. But I do agree with you. It was. I mean, he looks odd just walking through the desert.
That was it.
Like
Little quibble. Because again, as you guys probably know by now, I'm going to speak a lot of sugar about this movie. So I needed something, I think, to complain about.
Fine. I mean, and then when he finally gets back to the States, I do like that his first line, he's like, I need a cheeseburger, and then I need and Gwyneth Paltrow's character, who is Pepper Potts, who's his assistant, who you've seen a little bit earlier in this movie, we have not mentioned yet, was like, don't say it, I don't, and then he's like, I need a press conference. She's like, okay, because Tony, before everything happens, is just a playboy, he's an asshole, he is not a good person in any shape or form. And they kind of show that with a scene where he's at a casino, he gets an award, and he's not there to show up for the award. He's too busy gambling, doesn't even give a shit about his money or anything. He just leaves the money there and leaves. That's how I took that scene, at least. Maybe he takes the money with him.
Well, he hands the award to someone dressed as Caesar there too. He didn't even care about it.
Yeah, it's pure self-centeredness. It's pure self-centeredness and narcissism. That's really what he is. He's a complete narcissist. And it's a sudden turn, which this movies have to do that. It's hard for an action movie like this that has a lot to do to kind of this slow turn. But a traumatic experience like being in captivity for 3 months and tortured, I can see that causing a turn from narcissism into someone that's more outward looking and outward thinking. Maybe it's not all about me and my money and making myself feel good. So,
Jensen had a lot to do with that too, because he saved Tony's life, and Tony really started to care for this guy, and then gives his life so Tony can escape. It's like, well, maybe I need to start looking out for other people.
Yeah,
like he did for me. Pay it forward, kind of thing.
And Jensen has that great line, which he goes, and it's a touch cheesy, but I like it in context from when it happens when he asks Tony if he has any kids, and Tony, with kind of a regretful look on his face, like, no, I don't. He's like, so the man that has everything really has nothing. Mm-hmm. And again, implying that you have to have kids to be, but saying you have all this stuff, but you have no one to share it with. Right. And that's a really powerful thing for someone who doesn't think they're going to survive the next month or two. So
it plays a big part in showing his character change, which I also forgot to mention when he finds Yinsen dead, and that's when Yinsen tells him, I'm going to go see my family, and that's when he lets him know my family's dead. Like I never plan to get out of this alive. And I feel like that all that leads to when he does get to the press conference, which again, anyone who runs a corporation, it doesn't matter what you say, there's a whole bunch of other people make those decisions. You can't say, we're done making weapons. We're done. Shut down. It's all over. Like you lost that decision. you don't have that power.
Yeah, people will give you the illusion that you have control when things are going well, and very quickly you lose that illusion goes away if things start to go south. Well, and that's again.
Anytime you're a public traded company, I mean, you don't have that. Even if you are the son of the founder, that's all long gone when that company becomes that. You have shareholders, you have a board of directors. You don't have any of that choice anymore. All that's taken away from you.
You have a maniac partner friend who's been selling your weapons to foreign warlords because, hey, money.
God, he doesn't even look like Jeff Bridges. Like, I did not know that was Jeff Bridges the first time I saw this movie, and when I rewatched, I still does not look like Jeff Bridges.
I can't not see the dude, but I can't not. But he's great in it too. We can talk a bit about Obadiah when he starts coming around, but
he doesn't come off like in the very first meeting here when he's seeing Tony and when Tony does a press conference and he's like, okay, we'll talk about it, and he doesn't come off as a villain. Like everything you'd seen up to this point, I had no idea because I didn't know who Obadiah Stane was. I had never heard of the Ironmonger. I didn't know any of these characters. I did not see the twist coming that happened not too long after this.
Yeah, they sowed the first seeds here, kind of the beginning of his heel turn. They showed the first scene, especially when they're standing by the arc reactor and he's kind of thinking about the choices that Tony just made, that announcement that he just made. The kind of that heel turn. We're a weapons company. We make weapons. We make things that blow up. What we do.
Well,
that starts sowing the scenes, which is accurate, right? Look, dude, I get it. Those 3 months probably sucked, but this is kind of what we do.
You can't just stop what you're doing in that situation
right.
Because some people are going to see it as you make weapons so that we can fight, so that we can defend ourselves, even though it's not always the case. But that's what you're not going to win that argument,
right?
Even though you think you can just shut down your own company,
right?
But it does really make him a human character. And then when he does get back to his house, and Obadiah Stane, the dude, is telling him, "Hey, just go home, chill, stay off the limelight. I'll take care of things." And he starts working on the first Iron Man suit. And as you start seeing the scenes of him trying to put it together, like there's the part when he first makes the boots and he tries 10% propulsion and he flies into the ceiling. And I was thinking of this because my wife has had 2 concussions so far. I'm like, that fucker would have had a concussion and not been okay after that.
Yep.
Yep. He would not. I mean, he hit it probably going 30 miles an hour, it looked like, or 20 miles. I mean, he would be dead maybe even.
And then then falling 10 feet afterwards
in the metal.
No bones broken.
I mean, my wife got a concussion after getting punched in the face by someone in their 80s. I want to say it was.
Jeez.
She works at a nursing home, but it doesn't take much. And then when I saw that, that's all I could think of. I'm like, yeah, he wouldn't be okay. So, I don't know. It didn't hit me when I saw this years ago, but this time it hit me like, nope. This is wrong. I can go with a man can build an armor and fly. I can't go with a man can take a concussion and be okay. That's the part where I couldn't believe it. So, and yes, I know how stupid that sounds.
No, that's fine. If I could take a quick left turn and just a quick pause, and we can talk a little bit about Pepper, because at this point she has a couple of interesting scenes between her and Tony. Mm-hmm. What did you guys think about her kind of arc as a character in this movie? Because it does arc. At first she's the secretary who takes out the trash, as she so coyly put it in the beginning, and she really kind of takes this turn. She has one scene in particular here where she has to replace his little reactor with a new model that is incredibly good. Because it shows a level of intimacy that he doesn't have with anybody else, a level of trust, and it really again starts sowing the seeds for some of the pseudo romantic stuff that happens later on. What do you guys think about Pepper and how she's kind of handled in this?
I think going back to what Jensen asked before, he asked him if he had a new family, and Tony said no, and I think that kind of got him thinking that Pepper is probably the closest thing he has. So he starts to put a lot more faith into her, a lot more trust into her. And like you said, we kind of start to see that here. Yeah,
totally. I agree with that. Yeah.
It does a good job of it. Like, I didn't really care for her as a character at first, but as this movie progresses, she really grows on me. And as the MCU progressed, she really grown on me. Like, I didn't really know Gwyneth Paltrow as an actress very well. Like, I remember she's in Seven, but that was a very vague remember. Like, when I first saw this, I had no idea who she was. I'm like, oh, okay, people I don't recognize. All right. But yeah, they did a good job with her character, and just even when he replaces that reactor, that's another part that made me cringe. As you have this big hole in his chest, reaching in to put it in. And I'm like, ugh. Yeah,
it's all gross. It's great.
It's just like the game Operation. What's Operation? And I'm like, is there water on the knee? Operation. That's every time. That stupid commercial from back in the 90s. It's still in my head.
Yeah, we can remove a heart with just some tweezers and a little bit of care. It's really effective. It's so effective. Again, because it's silly and it's funny, and Tony, of course, is just so glib about, now my heart's stopping. I'm in cardiac arrest.
Going in cardiac arrest.
Yeah, that's all I'm doing. Just take your time with that one, please. They have a moment. It's a really, really very nice scene that again fleshes her out as very capable and someone who cares, which is the only person in his life who genuinely does, as we soon find out. Especially since I always saw Obadiah kind of as a pseudo father figure for Tony.
Yeah.
Because again, like, hey, don't worry, son, I'll take care of it. You just go and have fun in your sports cars. Daddy will take care of it. And I always felt that Tony kind of saw him as like this kind of pseudo father figure because his dad, of course, passed. So when he turns on him, all he's got is Pepper. And I think I agree. As she develops in the MCU, she's awesome. She's such an interesting character.
And since you brought that up, I had forgotten, but even in this movie, there is one little scene when they're showing newspaper of how his father died, and it's like killed in a car crash, which is not, touched upon until many, many movies later. Mm-hmm. But there's a seed for it right there. They say he dies in a car crash, which I was like, oh, now that I know where the MCU ends up going, I'm like, oh, nice one, guys. You got me there.
Yep. It does a pretty good job with that. I will also say, too, if there was a way we could give a Academy Award to robots, his little one-armed robot friend is so good. I love his one-armed robo friend. It's amazing. Again, especially towards the end, he's just super funny. Very, very cute, very funny.
I'll give you that.
We first see him during that montage of the backstory for his award ceremony. It's in one of the pictures of young Tony. So
Is it really?
Yeah, that thing's been with him for quite a while.
Get out of here. I had no idea. I didn't even catch that.
There's lots of Easter eggs in this movie, and there's also Easter eggs to other Marvel stuff. Some I caught, some I didn't even this time through. But I know this movie's full of them. Like all of the.
Oh, that's cool. I gotta look these up. That's awesome.
Like there is one as he starts building the armor, and as you see it, it starts. There's one scene where it's gold for a second, or they show Jarvis like, "Oh, it could be gold." It's like, "No, that's too flashy." His very first armor suit after the silver one is a gold armor, and I want to say the first Avenger issues, or no, it's before that. I want to say, but it is gold at first, so that was a reference to the comic.
Interesting.
It looks stupid as hell, by the way, when it's gold in the comic. So I actually tried to read the first 10 Avengers issues, and that's some tough reading right there.
Yeah, dated.
Oh God, wait till we talk about Thor eventually, and in the comic version of Thor and what he was in originally. But
jeez,
I might be in the minority. We don't want to talk about it now. I kind of like Thor.
It's a great movie. I think the movie's amazing. So,
okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm not negative about the movie. I'm just negative about the comic.
Fair enough.
It's a different story.
But yeah, so basically this whole setup of creating the Mark II is him again doing cool science stuff, which is always just makes me giggle with glee when people do cool science things with their hands, creating stuff.
Smart guy being smart.
Smart guys being smart. I'm super into that. I'm really into that because it's a type of power. Well, it's a type of power you don't see very often in any real comic book movie. Most of the times, a lot of the heroes, they have superpowers innately, or they were gifted to it by the gods, or got struck by something, or ate a tesseract. I don't know, whatever the hell people do. But he was
you're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, basically. But Tony Stark is just a smart person. That's why Batman's great, at least from a comic standpoint. He's great because he's a smart guy who makes cool stuff, or at least has people who make cool stuff. And Tony Stark just made something really cool because he's smart and capable, and that's really, really cool. So I love all that. We can talk about the Mark II when they make it because I'll talk about another thing.
Is cool, like in the way they put the music in. I want to say they have Back in Black playing too, or some song playing to go along with the montage of him building and trying different things, and it does a really good job of making it just awesome sounding. Yeah,
and I'll just chime in one other thing, and I'll let other people talk. I feel like I'm dominating here, so I apologize. I love the fact that the Iron Man suit has all sorts of moving parts and pieces that are clanking and clicking and gearing and connecting. My God, that Tetrising of how the suit comes together is so good. It scratches an itch I didn't realize I had. It made me giddy. I was watching it again. I'm like, oh, this is so great because it all looks like it could work. Whereas I think in other Iron Mans, they get silly. Like it's all particle effects and like little fish scales. But in this movie, everything looks like it could actually be a real thing. Like even the Mark I, if you remember when he does his miraculous faceplant into the sand, he picks up his arm and you can see the little gears and gizmos kind of twirling in his broken robot arm. And it's like, that's cool. Like he made that thing. It's a great, and the suit just looks ridiculously cool. So anyway, I was
thinking the same thing when I was watching this morning. It was, like you said, it looks like it could actually work. It reminded me of the best parts of the Transformer movies. The Michael Bay ones is when they transform, they made sure to make it so every part would fit. Nothing's like intersecting or whatever.
Yeah.
Practical quotes, but yeah, I got the same feeling.
They do it well. I didn't think about that when I was watching it, but you make a very valid point now that you bring it up.
Yeah, it's just really, really satisfying. Again, it's satisfying in a Tetris sort of way, where it's just this primal, everything connecting correctly and twirling and spinning and gears and servos or whatever other techno nonsense I can say. But it was great.
It works.
Yeah, it's a really very effective.
When I first saw the scene of him flying up and he tests the limits of the suit, and they're like, "You're getting too high. You're getting too high." I mean, I thought that was stupid the first time I saw it, but now I'm like, okay, now I understand the foreshadowing with this part, and I was more accepting of it, where he flies way too high, the suit freezes, he loses power, and he's on his way to die. And and then he restarts and gets it working. But I'm like, this thing, like, why would you do this? But it does fit the cocky asshole that he is. Like, okay, I'm going to test what I just built, even though, I mean, if someone's telling me don't go any higher, I'm like, okay, I'll stay down low. But that's me. And it's such a good foreshadowing because it shows the one way he's going to defeat the villain later on in the movie. So I thought that was really good.
But that's why I actually thought that was stupid this time around, because that's the only point of that scene. The only point of that scene is to telegraph the ending where he uses that trick to defeat Obadiah. For me, the first thing I thought and wrote down in my notes was, so you put your supercomputer into your suit, programmed them to have really cool AI, to make millions of calculations a second just to ignore them. Like, screw you, Jarvis. I'm going to go up to the end.
Okay.
Why did you do that? You
a whole lot dumber.
Yeah, you could have just installed Windows 10 and just done it that way. I don't see.
But then he would have died.
He could have crashed on the way up.
Like, update found.
Yeah, that's right.
He wouldn't have been okay.
Mandatory update required. I have a meeting in 5 minutes. What?
Oh, and I want to say it's probably before the scene when he's testing out the suit when he goes to the conference that he's not invited to.
Yeah.
Is that before this? Okay, and that's when he finds out, like, that's when you really do see the change of Obadiah Stane, where he goes in, the reporter that he slept with earlier, which we didn't need to mention, and she ends up, I thought you changed. He's like, what are you talking about? And that's when she shows him they'll have more Stark weapons. They have the Jericho missile this time, and that's when he realizes they're selling to them. They're not like getting the stuff. Someone is selling to them, and I thought that's a big scene, a big thing. And then you have the first of many Stan Lee cameos in that scene where he's dressed up as Hugh Hefner, and they're like, "Hey, Hugh." Yeah. I mean, that's great, but just everything happens, and then when they take the picture, and Obadiah's like, "You want to know who kicked you off the board and said you're out of it? It was me who started. It was me who stole those weapons." And it really, that's when you start to really see he's the villain of this movie, which I did not catch until then. But it's good. I like that to it.
Also, Christine Everhart, the reporter, gives him the pictures, and she says that they were taken in a small town called Gulmira, which is where Jensen said he was from. So it kind of hit Tony a little bit harder.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, that's why he heads over to, as I put in my notes here, when Iron Man heads to a place to shoot brown people. That's Gomera. Yeah, this is the first time I caught that. By the way, I didn't catch that before this, where that is the town where Jensen was from. So yeah.
I don't like this scene. I don't like it when he comes into town and he starts shooting. He takes out the terrorists. Like, I don't know. I didn't care for that scene as much. Like, it looks cool when he shoots the tank with the rocket and then blows up and he takes everyone out. But I don't know. It didn't do it for me for some reason this time around. But I like Iron Man fighting more supervillains, not just regular guys. Mm-hmm. But that's a me thing when it comes to superheroes.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I didn't mind it so much. I agree with you. I think for me it was more for pacing, because we've gone 20 minutes or so without a real action scene. So because this is a comic book action scene, you got to kind of do it. It's very interesting though. Taking on vastly underpowered enemies has no stakes. Like, he's not going to run into any issues, right? Like, it's not really a big problem. The only time he really runs into any sort of issue is when he's shot out of the air by the tank, by which he just shoots a tiny little missile and blows it up, which is great.
Just impressive aim on that tank, by the way.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, when you take out somebody with flat cannons and you look at like World War II footage or any war footage, I mean, you litter the sky with damage to take out a plane. Like, it is not just a aim, shoot, dude, he's gone. Like, it's a lot to take out a plane. Like, there's a lot of space up there. You got to hit an itty little bitty plane, big sky. So, and that also rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, I don't believe this. Yeah. And then I question myself when I'm watching a comic book movie and questioning things like
Which is fair. And that's fair, because for me too, it's the classic, late 2000s, like you said, a little bit after, 7 years after 9/11, that whole thing where, we're all fighting Iraqi insurgents and Al-Qaeda and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, which you can really feel it. Because I want to say, wasn't that still going on at this time?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think a lot of that was still going on. And if not, probably when the script was being written, because this took a while to come out. But what I really enjoyed about this, it was a tech demo. for me. It was, okay, what does this Iron Man suit do? What can it do? And it's a demonstration basically of all the things it can shoot, it can fly, it can take bullets, it can punch things hard. Here's all the neat things this Iron Man suit can do. It is in the service of, killing people who are bad. They're not great. They set that up very early with, the father and his kid, and separating the father from his kid and almost killing the dad. So
they're about to kill all the males.
Yeah, and they're about to do all that sort of thing. So they set it up where no one should feel really bad about the people being slaughtered here, because they gots to go. Like you gotta go. I
mean, that scene when he runs into one of the head captors and he starts to take him with him and he just drops him off and says, "You guys deal with him." And I want to be like, "Oh, that is not the place you want to be after you just went and destroyed their homes, killed their family." I mean, that would be a brutal way to go.
Yeah, so
it ain't going to be a shot to the head and you're done.
Yeah, and I'll say one more thing on it. Yeah, it's just, for me, I just really, I'll just say one more thing on it. It was just really, again, for me, it was just a tech demo, and it worked to that end, and just showcasing all the cool things this thing can do. And if you're showcasing all these cool things it can do, you might as well destroy some family-separating, child-killing terrorists while you're at it. They're fine. They gotta go. So, it didn't bug me. The next section of it did, though, the Air Force thing when he's dogfighting with American Airplane. I'm not a fan of this. I'll let you guys chime in on that scene as well.
It was unnecessary. I mean, Michael, do you have anything you want to say about it?
The previous scene with him in the village, I think part of it's meant to be like a redemption arc for him, because he sees that captor guy on the TV and then heads straight there. So I think part of it was on just wanted to get back at that guy. The planes just seemed like it was a way to introduce Rhodey and the rest of the Air Force to the Iron Man suit.
Yeah, I just felt like it was a little silly almost. And again, it was more showing off the tech of what this ththing can do. Mm-hmm. And again, this isn't, again, more American exceptionalism. You can't fight against our planes, but it's more about, it seemed to go on forever. Like it seemed to really go on, and he's on the bottom of the plane and he's pulling his flak and he's flapping his flaps and flying backwards. And Rose is like, "What are you doing, Tony?" And like, you don't know? Like, you don't hear the whooshing air past his head? I'm driving, Tony. I'm driving with the top down.
That is one of the worst parts of the movie. Like, you're not wrong. Like everything, they take out the plane, and then they're like, "Oh, it was a training accident." Like everything about that, you just blew up $1 million, some $20-30 million plane. It's not going to be
Tony
just.
Say something like, "I owe you." Doesn't Tony say something like, "I owe you a plane" or something?
Rhodey's like, "You owe me a plane."
It could have killed somebody. And just saying. Stupid. Of course, they have to have a redemptive moment where Tony goes down and pulls his chute, because of course the chute doesn't deploy. That whole thing. Again, cheesy.
I didn't like it.
Tony can't be a complete villain, because if the airman dies, he's right back down to jerkface level again. You've lost all credibility with the audience. So that's why the whole thing just felt forced. And again, I think they're trying to establish, like you said, Rhodes as like that kind of brotherly character, which he just isn't. They try.
No.
But he's not.
It didn't. I didn't care for Terrence Howard that much in this movie in general either. Like I didn't really think about the chemistry part until you mentioned it earlier tonight. But it was everything. I didn't care for Rhodes. Like I know the character, I like the character, but not in this movie. And I want to say the next scene when you come back is when everything starts to take a turn for the worse. Like that's when you first see Obadiah Stane go to Afghanistan, because that makes sense. We're going to get on a plane, go all the way there, because the terrorists have put together the old suit to try to start reconstructing what Tony built in the cave.
Right.
And I mean, that scene is also kind of like it really shows Obadiah Stane as just a very terrible person. Mm-hmm. He goes in, he's like, "Oh, you got the thing, you got the suit built." Then he all of a sudden starts paralyzing whatever his name is, and takes the suit with him. Redface. You come out, you see all the guards that he had standing on the ground with their hands or on their knees, hands up, and then he's like, "Clear the area, kill them all, like burn everything, get rid of the evidence." And you realize they're just gonna gun down everybody. I mean, these guys deserve it, but it just shows you of how evil he is. He just kills everything, burns the evidence, takes the suit, doesn't give one shits about any of what just happened. Mm-hmm. And that's when you really see, yes, he knew all along what was going on. I mean, you get more evidence a little bit later when other characters find out, but that's when, as the watcher, you find out. And again, for a guy who never read Iron Man comics, I had no idea who Iron Monitor was. So I'm like, oh, he's the villain. Like other movies, I see the name, I'm like, yeah, I know who that is. I already know he's a villain. I know the character, but in this movie, I was caught off guard. So
yeah, that was the movies. If you don't know Obi is evil, you know now. Like, and the only way he could have been more evil is if he had like a big mustache and was tying someone to a train track with a top hat, going. Like, that's the only way.
That's accurate.
That's basically it. Like now, okay, hey audience, you with me? He's evil. They do. Good, right? Everyone's okay on this. All right, good.
They do make the dude look evil when they make him bald, though. For some reason, Jeff Bridges being bald kind of has a little evilness to him for some reason. They did a good job of that.
This might be kind of hacked, but I couldn't help but think that as he was walking back to his car, if he just pulled out a White Russian and started sipping on it, I'm like, oh, that would have made me laugh.
Oh, and there's some, and this is all, and then I want to say it's just the part when he's at his Malibu house when Obadiah sneaks in, or is it the part where he sends Pepper Potts first to go to the office? I can't remember which happens first.
Yeah, he sends Pepper first.
Yeah, okay. He sends. Well, actually, does he? Well, because he sends Pepper. So yeah, Tony sends Pepper, and then right after that, Obi shows up and does his classic evil villain. Here's the plan. Here's what I'm doing speech.
That Pepper Potts scene, though, that scene I really like when she goes in there.
It's great.
He tells her, here, take this little flash drive, plug it into my computer. And in all honesty, there are flash drives that have things on. You can just plug right in this computer and everything's all good. It'll take care of all the problems. Like that's very real, I know.
That is a very real thing. We at my regular 9 to 5, we have those kind of drives that you just plug them into a thing and it just does a thing magically. It just turns on and does its thing. It's just funny. I had it written here was how the dude, I kept forgetting his name, Obi. He's just a very effective. He is a very effective comic book villain. He's not the best villain in any of the MCU, in my opinion, but he's got this devious, single-minded motivation of maintaining power. And that was something I really liked about it. It wasn't just wealth, because wealth for me at that point was a means to an end. It was all about power, maintaining power, maintaining control. Yeah. Especially for the company and especially for him. So he's really good in it. He's good. And it's Jeff Bridges. He's amazing. He's a national treasure.
And the way that Pepper Potts ends up seeing that video where the terrorists had sent a video to Obadiah Stane telling him, hey, you didn't tell us who we were supposed to kill. We want, we want more for our trouble type of thing is how I took it. Like then then he walks in the room and she knows exactly that he's an evil prick. And you can kind of see the fear in her eyes as she kind of plays off. She puts the newspaper on the drive. And even when she walks out and he asks her for the newspaper and she slips the drive in her hand, and he knew exactly what she was doing. Like, he wasn't dumb.
Yeah, well, he knew exactly because he saw that his download was complete. And this is a great moment. And Michael, I'll let you chime in on this as well. I love this because, again, this is why I think Pepper is the character with the most arc in this movie, is that she shows how capable she is. She's not just a secretary. She's not just taking notes and, buying expensive Jackson Pollock paintings, even though he's never seen it before. Just buy it, whatever. What do I care? She's capable and she's crafty and she's skilled, and that's cool. She really grows so much over the course of it. Again, towards the end, and we'll get to the ending. I'll save it for the ending, but yeah, I think it's a great scene.
Yeah, and Stane's got the intimidation factor when he walks in and he says, I know what you're going through, and she thinks that he knows what she's doing. And then he says, what are we going to do about this? Referring to Tony, but she thinks, again, that he's referring to her. It's just very intimidating.
Yeah, and it's scary. And it's scary for us, too, because we like Pepper. Like, it's scary. It's very tense,
They did a good job making you fear for her and worry what's going to happen to her. And I actually couldn't really remember what happened. So I didn't remember if he took her captive or what was the next scene coming. It's been so long, you could feel the fear, and I thought Gwyneth Paltrow did a good job in that part. Even then, and then the other thing that happens, I want to say right after this, because she goes to the government, which we hadn't mentioned this before, but off and on, I want to say 2 different times in this movie, you run into Phil Coulson. I can't remember the actor's name, but as many people know him, he's in a lot of the many later movies. He's in the Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, and he's like, "Oh, I'm here from the Strategic Homeland Defense something." And when I first heard that, I'm like, I know who Shield is, and I caught that reference even before they go, we call it Shield now. Which, as you look back in later things, you find out they've been calling it Shield for fucking years. I mean, it was Shield in the '70s, so I was like,
yeah, it's funny.
It works.
Because he kept saying, "Yeah, I know. We're working on the name." That's very good. And if you know the comics, Shield is a thing.
But Captain Marvel, it's Shield, and the Agent Carter show, I think it's already Shield. Maybe not in Agent Carter yet. I can't remember. But yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, and do remember too, because I believe, if I remember correctly, yes, Obadiah at this point also removes Tony's, after paralyzing him, removes his arc reactor from his chest. So he staggers downstairs, sees the one that Pepper put in the glass cube, proof that Tony Stark has a heart, his original one.
Which is a really cool scene.
It's one of the most beautiful scenes in the movie. Mm-hmm. When the Oscar-deserved robot hand grabs it and brings it down to him slowly. It's adorable. I want like a plush. You know what? I do. I want a plush Iron Man robot hand toy. I'll put that on my desk next to my portal turret and my cactar, and I just want that there.
I mean, he's no Peepo, but he's up there.
He is no. Listen, come on. No, there is no other.
Some people can get that joke that listen to this podcast. I'm sure.
I'm sure everybody. Most people listen to the show
Overblood.
Probably know this reference.
Most people do. Not everyone's from Overblood, but a good chunk of our listeners are sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, for those that don't know, tune in to episode 53 when we talked about it.
Oh, that's right. You guys did do Overblood. That's good.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it's really cool. And there's a little neat bit of foreshadowing, which made me laugh really hard when Terrence Howard, I don't know why he went there. I don't remember why he runs in to see Tony, I guess has his
because he won't answer his phone.
Yeah, Pepper said that he wasn't answering.
Pepper Potts tells her to go see him.
That's right. So he runs in, he sees Tony, you're all right, man. And he's like, yeah, I gotta get my Iron Man suit. And he looks over at the Warhammer suit and goes, another time or something. And I'm like, nope, not you.
He's like, next time. Something about next time.
Next time, baby.
You do not have a next time, Terrence Howard. Nope. Don Cheadle has a next time. He'll be stepping into those. It made me laugh really hard.
When I first saw it, I remember thinking, yep, I can't wait for the sequel and they get War Machine. And then all of a sudden, different actor. I'm like, better work out well for him.
And I keep saying Warhammer, and everyone in their car right now is screaming, punching their steering wheel.
I'm screaming too, quietly to myself.
Sorry.
I don't think Warhammer is a villain. There's Hammer, which is a villain in Iron Man 2.
Mm-hmm. And Warhammer, isn't that like a gaming thing with like toys and such?
Miniature. Yeah. Super expensive little miniatures that look so damn cool, but are terribly expensive. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. So sorry everyone on the roadways right now punching their steering wheel every time I say Warhammer.
See, but at least we correct it. We don't just leave it.
I apologize. I'm sorry. Sorry if I ruined your day.
It's worse when you listen to a podcast and they don't correct it, they don't figure it out, they just keep going like, oh well, who cares? That's worse. I've listened to some shows and I'm like, come on, guys, you have the internet. Like, I know how you record. You're sitting at home on your computer. Just look it up, damn it.
Yeah, so just turn it into a drinking game, everyone. Every time I say Warhammer, take a shot and be done with it. All right, so yeah, moving on, I guess.
I would say anytime we say something stupid, we want people to be able to finish the episode.
That's a bit too stupid yet. I've done worse. Oh, Star Wars Holiday Special.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah, and also, I'm like, just like the scene when you have Ironmonger or Obadiah Stane showing he sees the armor and he puts the arc reactor inside it and he's starting to activate, him using the same design Tony Stark had, but it's a gigantic armor suit that looks very reminiscent of his original one, but bigger, with more tech, more powerful. And it kind of reminded me of a horror movie when Pepper Potts comes back with, like, I want to say 5 SHIELD agents, and they're in the dark area. They're downstairs in the basement. They're looking for him, and it reminds me of like Alien or something because he just pops out at one point and just kills a guy. And I think honestly the lights light up again. You can see the eyes, if I remember correctly.
I think it's a callback to that early scene of Tony in the cave where the henchman comes in, the lights come on, and then as the audience now we're seeing it on the other side of the coin, and it's a little less cool. A little more terrifying.
Yeah, it's definitely more villainous.
and then I like that part when they're like, when they tell Tony she went there with 5 agents, he's like, that's not enough. And that's when he books it with the arc reactor in his chest that is not made for what he's doing. It is nowhere powerful enough to handle what's coming. And that also is kind of a cool scene. Like early on, it shows you're only at 50% power, and that it wasn't because it wasn't made for flight as he's flying to get to save Pepper.
It's an excellent choice because what it does is it introduces stakes that wouldn't have been there before. It wouldn't have been there because if he was a fully powered Iron Man suit, he wins. Like there's no stakes or concern. But now that you have this ticking counter of 18%, Jarvis is 15%. And we haven't even talked about Jarvis and how cool he is and how I love the fact that a narcissist made a sarcastic AI. It's great. That's just wonderful.
And Jarvis will have from the comics too.
Yeah. And we'll have opportunities, I'm sure, because Jarvis is there forever. But I love the fact that he did that because it introduces stakes. It introduces an actual concern like, Iron Man could actually lose this battle. And so it's very effective. And this whole fight where they're throwing around cars and Audi clearly sponsored something. There's lots of Audis prominently being tossed in the air and parked in front of warehouses.
I didn't catch that when I saw this either time, but now that you mention it, I can kind of see what you're talking about.
I'm extremely sensitive to product placement. Bizarrely so. I catch this. If I see 2 BMWs, I'm like, you guys signed a check.
So have you heard of this movie called The Italian Job before?
Yeah.
That's what I think of anytime I think of product placement, that movie. But
but yeah, it's a really effective, and again, big, visceral, lots of punching, and it's very fun sight. Again, just using vehicles as weapons, and it's a little video gamey, but in a good way. I really enjoyed it.
Scene, and it shows him just get his ass handed to him pretty quickly to where he feels one of his only opportunities is to fly as high as he can to trick, because he knows that Obadiah Stane hasn't had enough time to test it and doesn't know about the freezing. Like, I thought that was cool. He takes them all the way up. He's like, I got you. He's like, so what you do about the freezing? He's like, freezing? Yeah. And all of a sudden everything freezes and they drop.
And it's old tech. Okay. Yeah. It's old tech that, Obadiah is using because he copied off of the, version 1.0. So, yeah.
It's a cool scene, and just that whole, even when I rewatched it, that whole fight with Ironmonger, I enjoyed it. They show, like you were saying, cars getting smashed up, and it shows, they're not, they're just fighting. They kind of save one family in the car at one point, but he's not trying to get everybody out of here, it's just fight, which I like, because, BVS hadn't happened yet, so people weren't so scared, and Man of Steel hadn't come out.
God, you can see Tony use the unibeam, where he fires the beam out of his chest. Which I wouldn't know of if it wasn't for Marvel vs. Capcom, but it was cool to see in the movie.
Oh, that's cool. I remember that. Yeah,
Ultimate Alliance too. I want to say
that's
how I know it. But it's a really cool. Like I like it when he shoots the beam at him. I don't think it really does too much, but it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it drops the car. That's what it does. It drops the car with the people in it. And even after he freezes him, he lands. He's all messed up. I want to say he loses power. His helmet's starting to come apart. And Ironmonger is just fine. Like, he just lands. He's like, yeah, well, I'm okay. My tech's better. And I thought that was cool when he resorts to the last thing he can think of is to blow the arc reactor, to blow both of them up. And he tells Pepper Potts, start hitting all these buttons. And I'm thinking to myself, shouldn't there be more safety than just hit button 1, 2, 3, 4, red button? I want to be like, what if you had a very upset employee or someone just stupid? Like, no, I'm gonna hit 1, 2, 3, 4, and this button. Like, I don't know.
Some scientist walks in a little too tipsy after happy hour. He's like, hey, I don't want to work at this place no more. Click, 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 click. Boom.
That's what came to my head. Like, shouldn't there be like a key card or something she has to swipe or something where a normal person couldn't get into it? And she just hits buttons. Like, I'm like, oh, okay.
If your machine has the ability to destroy itself and create an apocalyptic explosion cloud, there should be 2-factor authentication. You need to at least be able to get like a text to your phone. Like, oh, yes, I do want to create this cataclysmic problem.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, again, the things that bug me in this movie are the part, like, I'm like, that doesn't make sense, but I'm completely okay with a flying man. But I'm, so I got nothing.
Yeah.
But I understand that.
Yeah.
I recognize that and accept it.
Fair.
That's what it is.
Very fair.
But I like comic books, so.
Yeah, what do you think about this, Michael? This final fight between Obi and Iron Man?
I liked it. Oh, sorry. Go.
Oh, yes.
Wrong, Michael.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. I already talked.
Like you said, I like that they put stakes on it where Tony's not at full power. He goes to shoot him with a repulsor blast and realizes he had already taken that gauntlet off, so he's pretty limited in what he can do. So he resorts to just ripping out wires out of Obadiah's suit.
Which is pretty great because he knows how it was built.
This looks important.
You took out my optic cable.
I wonder if the airport scene in Civil War is a callback to that when Ant-Man does the same thing to Tony.
Oh, I forgot about that. I hate Civil War, by the way. Just to let you know.
Really?
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
We'll get there in a year and a half.
You will just say we'll get there in a year and a half. You have some time to think about it and stew over it.
Oh, God. Yeah, I have words about that movie. I like most of these movies, but there's a few that struck me badly.
Yeah, I got a few that kind of no, they're not all gold.
No.
But yeah, the only problem I had with the scene is the final bit where Obadiah is doing his final bad guy speech. I want to be your son, make money, brr. And so Pepper Potts blows up the reactor, but he falls into the goop too. Like it doesn't. All of that scene was very muddled and kind of mushed up for me.
Yeah,
there was a lot going on. I'm still not clear, and I saw this less than 24 hours ago.
What I took from it is that since he was a smaller ball of mass, that he was propelled from it, whereas Ironmonger was such a huge, gigantic metal thing, he conducted electricity, and since the helmet was off and he was exposed, he just got electrocuted. That's how I took it this time. Because he looks like he gets propelled from the blast when it happens.
Yeah, what about you, Mike?
Did it explicitly say that Obadiah dies? Like, I know everyone just kind of assumes, but
it doesn't. I can't remember. You bring up a really good point.
Because I know Coulson says later on that their cover story was that he was on vacation and small aircraft has a poor safety record, assuming that he's dead at some point.
Yeah,
not wrong.
But he never comes back. Like, he's never referenced in anything. So, I mean, I saw, because again, the note I wrote down was Obi falls into the explosive goop and kabloom. That's what I wrote. I don't remember what happened.
Accurate.
So, okay.
They don't. He's never referenced again at all. Like, I mean, when they first started this movie, they were not planning on keeping villains alive, because any movie before this, you kill the villain off because you're not, even when you get a sequel, you do a different villain. They never thought the idea we're going to do what a comic book does, and you can keep bringing the villains back years later because we're the heroes, we can't kill them. So
yeah, good point. Yeah, right.
I want to see it. I can't remember. I mean, I always assumed he's dead, and it's been 12 years and he hasn't come back. So
yeah,
but you bring up a good point. I never thought about that.
Yeah,
I never really mentioned it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So after that, basically, you're in the final 5 minutes, and I guess it's the another press conference. And
I like that.
Yeah, there's a couple of really key things here for me. I really like the fact that, again, they kind of gave Tony you're on your yacht, just read these cards. Read these cards. Tony Stark, read these cards. This company still has value. Read the cards.
He won't read the cards, and Terrence Howard is
of course, Terrence Howard's like, yeah,
he's stick to the cards.
And Terrence Howard is reading the cards because he's a good old boy, American, fighting guy. So, and then of course he has the classic, he starts it and then call back to the original, the reporter whose name I don't remember, the one that Pepper Potts called trash.
Oh,
Christine. That's
sorry. Vicky Vale is Batman.
Yeah, that's Batman.
Wait, did she have a last name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she says it when she first meets him.
Great.
At the casino.
Wow. Excellent.
I had it.
Cool, man.
I had it open, but it's not open anymore.
That's fine. No, it's fine. And then, she asks basically, I forget what she asked, some question, and he turns and just says, "I'm Iron Man." And what'd you guys think of that? Because I thought that was the perfect way to end it. I thought it was in keeping with the character. It obviously opened up the door to a host of sequels and opened the door to an entire 20-year franchise and universe of movies. What'd you guys think of that?
Well, like you said, I've been saying that Tony's the narcissist. He's not going to give somebody else credit for that.
Right.
Yeah.
He's not going to give some
I am Iron Man. some bodyguard.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, he was a bodyguard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Evidently, I was watching before I went to bed last night. I was watching some of the special features, and evidently that was the cover story for Iron Man for the longest time in the comics. Was that Iron Man was the bodyguard of Tony Stark?
Okay,
So
that's cool.
that's kind of where that callback comes from. I want to do a little extra research, and I got sleepy, so I didn't do more than that really. But yeah, no, that's where that kind of came from.
So it seems like they're kind of poking fun of it because Tony's like, it's kind of a flimsy excuse, isn't it?
Yeah, no, totally.
Bodyguard.
Because it was the
That's
1960s, and like Mike said, man, oh boy, those can be rough.
I like that scene. Like when I first saw this movie back in, I saw it whenever it came out on DVD at a Redbox. I rented it, and I remember seeing that last scene. He goes, "I am Iron Man," and then everyone jumps up. I had a big smile on my face, and even rewatching it, I'm like, and I knew it was coming. Of course, I still have a big smile. Like I think it's a great scene. I think they do a good job ending the movie on that note, and it really wraps up, and it fits the character because he is a narcissist. Yeah,
and exactly that bit of him doesn't change. It's just that he's kind of more focused onto a bigger idea. It's kind of like maybe last year at this point, I did a podcast with another show about Horizon Zero Dawn and how, if you've ever played it, the lead character of that game, she doesn't arc, her gaze widens. So her, as a character, she hasn't changed. She's still kind of like this smart ass, in it for myself kind of character. But by the end, she realizes there's a bigger world out there that probably does need her help. And that's what happens here. He hasn't really changed. He's still a narcissist. He's still a bit of a jerk. He's still self-centered. But he realizes there's a much bigger world out there that probably could use his talents more than he's giving them. Mm-hmm. And that's what that kind of shows, like, I am Iron Man. And in that, it's like it cements him. It establishes him that, yes, I am this character. He doesn't have to, in subsequent movies, ever hide around. Like, we don't have to do was Tony Stark really Iron Man? We're done with that.
Almost nobody hides in the MCU.
Right, no one's hiding, which is good. I like that. Again, the secret to, Superman and Batman or alter egos, and I get the mythos behind that and the reason. But the fact that he just goes, yeah, you know what? Screw it. I'm Iron Man. That's awesome. Then again, it's his gaze widening, realizing I'm going to now be this hero, even though he's imperfect at it, as you see in Iron Man 2. But it's great. It's a wonderful ending. And then we get rock really music to end credits.
I did enjoy the rock music in this movie. Like I'm not a big AC/DC fan, but I felt they did a good job of kind of putting it in this movie and Iron Man 2. Like it works. It works. Mm-hmm. It works fine. And one thing that we haven't mentioned is the guy who directed this movie, Jon Favreau. He also plays Happy Hogan, which he's only briefly in this movie, but he's in a lot more the next few. Very small part. The end. He's in the movie until the very right. Like he's in the final movie. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's in it till the absolute end. And Jon Favreau is a great director, and he's obviously done a lot of good work. So it's he treated the source material with a lot of care. Before we can move on to, I guess, final summations, if you want to say that. The end credits, and then we have our end credits scene, little teaser. I love that. What's that? I love the end credits with Nick Fury.
The stinger, yeah.
The stinger. That's the word I was.
That's the word you're looking for.
Yeah, stinger. The end credits stinger. Yeah, where Tony meets Nick Fury and intros the Avengers. I remember seeing it. I don't know if I saw this in theaters, but I'm pretty sure I did. Not knowing who Nick Fury was, what the Avengers were. And I will be honest with you, every single time I've seen an Avengers movie, an MCU movie, I stay to the end, past the end credits. I know you just stay to the end. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I never understand the damn ending. I never understand it. Did I go online? What was this? Who's Ultron? What is this? Oh, he's got a gauntlet with thing. Okay. But I don't know why. Ultron was never in any of the movies. I mean, we get James Spader, but we don't get Ultron. I meant to say Thanos. I'm sorry. Like, what's a Thanos? I did. I said, what's a Thanos? I don't know. Who's this purple guy with the weird chin? Well, I don't know. Here's the thing. Nobody knew who the fuck Thanos was either, so don't feel bad. Fair enough. Okay. All right. He is not... Like, one thing I hadn't mentioned yet, at this time, Iron Man was like a C character. He was nobody.
Thanos is another one. He was like a C-list, D-list villain. I mean, he wasn't big. He had a couple big arcs, but outside the comic books, people didn't really know who he was. I mean, I did barely, but he was not
Gotcha.
real big villain. So don't feel bad.
Yeah,
recognize Thanos.
But it was, go ahead. Sorry.
The Super Nintendo War of the Gems game was based on the Infinity Gems. So I knew Thanos from that.
Wow.
It's based on the Infinity War saga, which is the second one. Which is not
what
as
is
good
this?
as
What game has the Infinity? Sorry, what game has the Infinity?
War of the Gems for Super Nintendo.
All right, Emu Paradise. War of
it's
Emu Paradise is not around anymore, really. So
yeah, it is. Okay. We'll turn
it. Yes.
Oh no, we'll turn this off in a little bit, and I will explain to you that it really still is.
I am curious. I'm gonna say. Okay.
Yeah,
but
we will talk.
No, don't feel bad about Thanos. Like a lot of the villains they use, like even Ironmonger, he wasn't a big villain either. Like I didn't even know who he was until this movie. So.
And when you say when you say Ironmonger, that's the Obadiah.
Mm-hmm.
Obadiah Stane.
Does he ever mention himself as Iron? Does he call himself that?
He calls him something about a warmonger or something monger comes up one time.
When he and Tony are in front of the arc reactor after Tony says they're not going to make weapons anymore, he refers to them as Ironmongers because they make weapons.
Gotcha.
But that was it.
Okay, yeah, because I was just associating that. I didn't realize that's what the actual character name was. Okay.
Yeah, but he was such a D-list. I mean, C or D-list character for Iron Man. That's something that is really like now he's an A character, but he was not at this time when this movie came out. He was a nobody. That's why I liked him. Like my favorite characters altogether out of Marvel are Hawkeye, Vision, Iron Man, and Captain America because of the Avengers game. And at the time, all four of those characters, especially Hawkeye and Vision, were nobodies.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Hawkeye's probably still kind of B level, and Vision's B plus. But regardless, I think, it definitely took Iron Man from a relative obscurity into fame, and again launched this entire 20-year MCU and launched it effectively.
It started in 2008. We're in 2020 right now.
12 years. We'll see how far it goes.
Only 12 years?
It might
12 years. 20 movies, I think. 25 movies.
People are punching their steering wheels going, it's not 20 years, it's 12 years.
It could be 20 years if this podcast is still going and someone digs up an episode.
I don't know math. I don't know. It's just time. Time occurred and passed. So final summation, I guess. Like final thoughts on Iron Man.
Well, first, I do want to like that whole scene with Nick Fury. I mean, there are a lot of people like me. I didn't see that until I watched it on YouTube at some point. Like when he says we're starting the Avengers Initiative. I mean, it doesn't happen for another 6 years, but for so many people, that was the hope that we're going to do more. We got a big grand plan coming up, and it really I loved it. So I just wanted to say that, and I think it was such a great because I bet they didn't even know if this was going to work or not. They're like, throw it in. Who knows what will happen? Because this movie made money, but
it's like we talked about at the start. Did they have a plan going in? But if they thought enough ahead to put that stinger, they probably had some kind of idea of wanting to interconnect all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Samuel L. Jackson was already cast, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure they didn't bring him in for one afternoon to film one Nick Fury scene with the hopefully this works out. But you never know. I know. You never know.
Money. You pay him, he'll show up. He's even said that. He's like, you pay me, I'll be there.
Hey, good man.
That's how he is. He doesn't. He's like, I need to make money. Hire me. So
listen, nice things cost money.
But you guys want to move on to Shelf or Box then? Kind of say our last thoughts there.
Totally, yeah.
I think we covered everything in this movie. Other than Jarvis very much, but that's okay. We mentioned him a little bit. Bill, why don't you go first for Shelf or Box?
Oh, I am shelving. Absolutely. It's on my shelf. It's on my it's in my giant binder of 400 movies that I painstakingly put together this year when I moved and alphabetized. So it is an absolute shelf. Not only is it just like not only is it just a really great comic book movie, it launched an entire series. It changed the way we look at comic book movies, I think, where it can be more character focused. Again, you had your Dark Knight, and that's fine, and they're great, obviously. But to really take, like you've said, a C-level character and just elevate them to... What was that?
Too bad they never made a third Dark Knight movie. Sorry, I just had to.
It just launched this entire universe, and if this hadn't been successful, we wouldn't be talking about an entire universe of movies, probably, or at least not as favorably as we are now. And just as a standalone movie, just if you have no interest in the MCU whatsoever, if you're listening to this, you probably do. But even if you don't, it's just a good movie with some good characters, some great action that's visceral, and it's cool visceral action. And it's a treat. It's an absolute treat. I was so glad to pop it in physically into my Blu-ray player last night. And my wife was super psyched about it too. She's like, "Oh, we're gonna watch Iron Man? Sweet!" So that's always a sign of a fine film.
That's why I started this, because I'm like, I need to rewatch these movies, and I'm a podcaster now, so I need to watch them and then talk about them for 2 hours.
Hey, material, right? It's all research. Yeah.
And I hadn't seen them in so many years. That's what had drew. And when Disney Plus came out, I'm like, well, thank you, Disney. You just made my whole idea possible. So that's why this happened. All right, and Michael, why don't you go next?
It's going on the shelf, of course.
Okay.
It's like even as a standalone movie, there's not a wasted scene in this movie. Like, everything sets up something that's called back to later, whether it be the icing or Tony deploying the flares, or pretty much anything out of Jensen's mouth. It all comes back around at some point. Like, everything ties together perfectly, except whether or not Obadiah dies or not. But
I never questioned it until this episode. So
yeah. And then I got two more things that we never touched on, was how awesome Tony's hologram tech is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I had a note and we passed it.
Everyone wanted that tech.
Yes.
And
that is pretty damn cool.
All the diehard fans are going to be disappointed if we don't mention Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scrap.
Oh, is that the scene when he screams at the middling scientist by the arc reactor?
Yeah. And the guy's
Stark?
like,
that's Obadiah's big acting moment, and he goes, "I'm not Tony Stark."
That line's been memed to death, so I figure we at least need to mention it.
No, that's perfectly fine. And talk about your virtual computer, virtual operating system.
So cool.
I wrote a bad line in my notes, like, if I had this, which of course everybody wants this, by the way, all I would do is play solitaire and do Word, like, but I would do it in 3D. Like, my hands would be in the actual machine. You know.
I guess it's kind of what VR's become.
Kinda, yeah. The one that cemented me with that, just because, again, I wrote little lines on it, was when he designs the first arm, the hand portion of the suit, and he sticks his hand into the hologram and makes it move. What? That is so cool. I want all those things. Just hollow out a room.
We'll talk about that specific part again in a much, much later movie.
Yes.
There's a long callback to it.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
This Spider-Man Far From Home.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Peter does the exact same thing.
I forgot that movie existed. So I haven't seen it in theaters. So it'll be another 2 years by the time I see it. All right, I'll go next. This is obviously going on the shelf because I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it the first time I saw it. I enjoyed watching it the second time when I went through all the movies before Avengers, and I watched it a third time before Age of Ultron. It's such a great movie. Like, I watched it again. I enjoyed. I want to say there was maybe one scene I could have cut, but I can't remember what I was talking about. But I feel like there was something I didn't like.
It was
overall great.
Yeah, the airplane stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I could have cut that. I mean, great movie. I mean, definitely. If you have Disney and haven't seen it, go watch it. If you have Disney Plus, you're like, go watch it anyway because it's worth it. Just go back to it after this episode. I highly recommend watching this movie again. It still holds up. You can see the beginnings of what's going to become the MCU, but also, as we've said, it is a great standalone movie also. So going on the shelf, and I can't wait to see how the rest of these go because there's some I'm really questioning.
Mm-hmm. No problem. It's going to be fun.
The next one.
Yeah.
Next one we will be doing next month. We're going to follow the release of these movies. We're going to do The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton, which it is an MCU movie and it isn't an MCU movie, but we're going to go as it is.
Yeah, Disney they claim it is, so we're gonna go there because it is part of the canon. So yeah, we're gonna go there. I've never seen it, so I am.
You never seen Hulk?
I've never seen Hulk, so I'm cautiously looking forward to this.
You're in for.
It's not.
It is. Oh, it's not my least favorite. My least favorites, I'm going to say on here, are Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is probably, and Iron Man 3. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is probably up there as the number one least favorite movie in the entire MCU.
All right. Wow, that's shocking with Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I thought it's great, but
I love the first one.
Yeah, I thought 2 was better. No. Honestly, I thought 2 was actually better. But we can talk about it. Obviously in a couple of years. It's funny when you said you're in for and then paused. You're probably looking for treat, but didn't think treat would be the right word. I immediately thought you're in for IHOP. Like IHOP, you're in for food. It's pancakes. Like,
you're in for Burger King hamburgers.
You're in for Burger King. I mean, it will sustain you.
I am excited to talk about Incredible Hulk next month when we get to that. Do you want to give a quick thing to mention that this movie had a budget of 140 million for Iron Man and did make 585 million back in the box office, which is not great. I feel like for what, but at the time it did good. It made his money back. So
more than made it, and it was definitely proof that yes, this can work. Right, this kind of movie can work. So it was enough. Yeah,
and so tune in next month. We'll have another one. As you're listening to this, it's the end of March, and then in April we will be having for you in the Incredible Hulk. And if you guys do enjoy this, and we enjoy doing this, we might do some other ones eventually as a side thing, off and on. Who knows? But it's something that I've thought about, but I haven't voiced. But we'll see what happens. And
I'm down.
I want to thank you guys all for listening. And if this is your first episode, we do lots of different things. We have lots of different movies you should check out. We also do games every week. We do comics every month. So there's lots of episodes. I'm sure you'll find something that gets your fancy. Take a listen, and please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, where I'm constantly posting images and things about the upcoming shows that we do have going on. So I want to thank everyone for listening. Thank my awesome 2 co-hosts that joined me for my wonderful journey of through the MCU that we're going to try for. So, and we will see you guys. Yeah, man. See you guys next month. Bye, everybody.
See you. Bye.